Welcome to another edition of Dynamics Fortnite Fridays.
Where we cover everything Dynamics great and small. Well, we're midwinter, Bart.
Yeah, you sound kind of midwinterish down
Yeah,
there.
you know what? I caught something, but the beautiful thing is it's like, it's viral, I think, but you can't catch it through computer viruses, right?
So far, that internet
So
can only transmit data.
that's so far so good. Which kind of like is a bad joke, which kind of leads into our bad jokes. So what do you got for me today?
I decided to take a slightly different tack today.
All
I'm
right, all
going to do
right.
a little bit more of a deep thought. I'm kind of
Oh
in the
no, no.
vein of like, how do you evaluate the truth of the statement "I'm lying"? One of those. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's what would happen if you somehow, unfortunately, lost your left arm?
I
Well,
I
your
don't
right
know.
one would be left.
Oh God. That's terrible. That's
It's not
terrible.
really a joke. It's more of a
That's
deep
not really, yeah,
thought, but
exactly,
it's
exactly.
kind of funny.
Kind of like, Deep Thoughts with Jack Handy, right? It's like,
Yes, I
so,
remember Jack Handy well from the
I
old
remember, it's
SNL
like, the
days.
one that I remember from Jack Handy was, it's like, Jesus is in all of us. Hope he likes tacos, because that's what he's getting. Okay. So,
Oh,
anyways, I'm gonna go back to the dad joke.
back
Well,
to the
I'm still
cards. What do you got
back to the
today? What pulled
cards.
off the top?
Singing in the shower is fun until you get soap in your mouth. Why? Because then it becomes a soap opera. That's really, really
Oh,
bad. That's bad.
wow. That
Okay,
that's
I
yeah.
like my Jack Handy better.
I do
So
too. You were better coming off memory.
so anyways, as always, I hope our content is way better than our jokes. So what do you got for
It
us,
will
Bart?
be. I'm confident.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, let's start off with a reminder that on February 12th, we have a online conference for any of you that like to develop cool solutions with Power Platform. The Powerful Devs online conference is coming up and the registration link is there. So take advantage. For next new capability, we have made some nice improvements to working with the tables experience. That's kind of the new data workspace in Power Platform. And it's been awesome because it shows all the relationships, gives you the ERD diagram, make changes, all kinds of cool stuff. But it was always kind of set up to only work with new tables that you were creating as part of that data workspace. Well, the new exciting capability that is coming is we can now bring existing tables into the data workspace so that you've got a complete ERD of what was already there and what you're adding to it as part of your new solution if you would like. The only thing that is kind of the limitation of this is that all of those existing tables that you bring into data workspace are read-only. So they're there and you can see them and you can see the linkages to them. You just can't make edits to the metadata of those existing tables and add columns and things like that. You still have to go into the classic experience to make the changes to it. Over time, that will get removed, I'm sure, but that's the only sort of downside of them. Next, pipelines or managed operations got some nice new capabilities, and that is both maker deployment pages so that as someone who makes solutions, they can see where their solutions have gone through the pipelines tooling. For if you're in the source environment, where are all the places that landed for targets? Or if you're in the target environments, where did it come from in order to land there? And that it will show you your deployments as a maker in kind of either side of that, but all you see is your own in that experience. Then there is an admin version of that so that the people who administer the tenant and look across all the various environments that are out there, they can see all of those deployments and all the pipelines and activity and kind of see what's going on, see the failed deployments, set up delegated deployments, set up source control integration, and a few things like that, all as part of the managed operations capability. So nice new capability for pipelines. Then the big announcement that's sort of all over the socials right now is M365 Copilot Chat. So I'm sure you've probably heard about this. This is a new way to consume M365 Copilot without having to buy the $30 per user per month license. and it allows you to set up a different way to bill it kind of by consumption. So each message has a certain number of or a certain amount that costs, and that can get charged to an Azure subscription. And the various things that you build for agents within that M365 Copilot capability allow you to use Copilot Studio to build agents to where you don't have to license that with message packs and the $200 pieces per month. You can just turn on the pay-as-you-go plan for it, and it will also allow you to just charge an Azure subscription for consumption of what you've built that you decide to work with that way. There's a whole bunch more to the announcement, but it is pretty big news that should make it a lot easier for a lot more organizations to go big with Copilot Studio agents and or M365 Copilot capabilities within the context of users they wouldn't normally pay the per user per month license cost for because it will be infrequent use. And this is a great solution for that. All right. Message capacity that you purchase in those message packs or through other licensing is something that you need to be able to manage as part of this, and that only when the message capacity for an environment has been consumed that you allocate to it that you've pre-bought would pay-as-you-go kick in. So understanding sort of how that works, what the consumption looks like, how to start figuring calculations around it are all covered in this article that I linked to. So read that to make sure you understand the details. If you're using Power Pages in the ALM processes, it used to be a little bit too wild west, if you will, in terms of when we made the out-of-the-box updates right to the platform, that you had a little trouble being super reliable in terms of how things were going to work. Well, we have put a lot more structure around that very, very recently. And so now we're going to have early upgrade environments, non-production environments, and production environments. And that we will have release processes where, in week 0, only upgrade and early upgrade environments are going to get updated. And in week 1 through 4, kind of on a cadence, all the non-prod environments will get updated in your tenant first. And a week later, after you've had a week to test in those non-prod environments, will the production environments in your geography get updated. So it will be much more predictable. You'll have the early upgrade ones, then the non-prod ones, then the prod ones happening. So nice new update to make sure that is way more predictable. For Power Apps, especially the Canvas apps or the custom pages in a model-driven app, we now have 6 new controls that are the modern Fluent controls that have all kinds of nice updates and capabilities to them that are now generally available. So use them in production scenarios. A few things that get highlighted about the way those things function is in here. If you are a maker, take advantage. Power FX also has some nice capabilities as the way to build functionality in these apps. This one is pretty coder centric in that what we're giving you in Power FX is the way to build user-defined functions and user-defined data types and enhanced component properties, moving to preview instead of some sort of experimental feature. And so all of these things and the ways you might use them are detailed in here. If you make quite complex apps and you know what these things mean, which isn't necessarily all these citizen makers, but more of the professional developers, get some nice new functionality to give you lots of reusability type ways to build functions and to deal with your data types to make sure that they are working the way you would like them to. Another nice kind of developer feature is for SQL Server as a connector in Canvas apps, because you pretty much have to use them in Canvas apps in this way, otherwise they wouldn't make sense. There is a new type of environment variable that lets you define your SQL Server authentication properties and which server is going to be hit as an environment variable so that it can be a different SQL Server for dev than test and prod stored as an environment variable, which is a big deal. The one limitation to this is that only really works, well, I guess there's two. That really only works in that Canvas scenario, like I mentioned already. The other thing is we are only putting this in place at this time for SQL Server authentication happening through intra authentication. If you're using SQL Auth or Windows Auth in order to authenticate to that SQL Server, you're still going to have to use the connection references. If you're using intra, this new environment variables path will be a nice new enhancement that you'll be able to use. And there's nice instructions for how to set them up and how to use them when you're setting up your data sources and those kind of things. So nice updates for SQL as a connector. So that Copilot chat that I introduced a few posts ago that was all about the sort of different way to think about billing and some other new capabilities. Well, there is a starter kit download that I've given you the link for here. And when you download it, all you really get is a download of a zip file, Copilot Chat Starter Kit. And inside of that zip file, you'll find 4 different presentations. One is kind of a printable handout that you might want to let people post on bulletin boards or wherever else you might want to have those, hand them out to employees. Then we've got just an overview guide, a training guide, and an IT controls guide that are all pretty highly produced, nice presentations to walk you through the concepts or to distribute out for whoever can take advantage of those. So just thought I would at least make sure that was publicized if that will help you in rolling some of those capabilities out. The release plans for Wave 1 of 2025 across all of Power Platform and all of Dynamics, whether it's the ERP side or the customer engagement side, is now published. I am not going to walk you through this. I'll just kind of bring it up to say that we've got the full detailed plans out there. There's a summary video, and then there's really brief summaries that basically just say for each of these things, we're bringing a bunch of Copilot experiences to bear. That's really what it comes down to. So nice capabilities in all of them. Please take a look at them and then watch for them to get released sometime between April and November of 2025. All right. The Power Apps Designer Plan, I know we've talked about. It used to be in only sort of private preview tenants where you had opted into a program and were approved to allow you to test that plan designer. Well, it is now moved into public preview. And that plan designer, if you remember, you describe what you want your app to do, and it'll take off and use a bunch of autonomous agents under the covers to define user stories and define data models and define apps and flows and all these kinds of things, and sort of just take your statement of what you want the app to do and build all these other things for you using AI and agentic models. So it's a really cool thing. A lot of organizations have found tremendous benefit in it. It's great that we're now turning this on for everybody to start at least playing with. It's not ready for production use yet, but it is time for everyone to test, give us feedback so that we can move it to general availability sometime soon. These last ones are just important messages that came through in the M365 Message Center that are relevant for your Power Platform needs. One of them is that we are changing the telemetry gathering tooling that our support teams use to be able to provide great support for you if you're having issues with anything in the Power Platform. So as we update that telemetry tooling, we've got a new suffix that you need to enable your firewall to allow traffic to go out to, called events.data.microsoft.com, so that our agents who need to be able to look at that telemetry, to look at those details and help troubleshoot and get your problem resolved quicker, have access to that data. If you don't, then they just won't have access to the data and we'll have to do it the old-fashioned way. But just thought I would make sure people were aware they should do that to get better support. The cutover will be complete by February 20th. Another new capability in Dataverse itself, it's really been an interesting thing to manage the views that are tied to the tables in Dataverse. And apps have given a new way to manage that at the app level, but we're now going to be able to tie security role capabilities to the views that are the system views that just come with Dataverse. So being able to tie certain roles to secure or to views. And if you have that role, you only see the views that you've been granted access to instead of all the other ones that were sort of irrelevant to you is a really nice new enhancement that is coming very, very soon to public preview. Environment backups of the default environment were always essentially there as a way to recover only that default environment. But there is now a way to restore a backup from your default environment to a Power Platform developer environment so that you could use that kind of as source data and source capabilities in a developer environment to jump off from. So it's a interesting new capability. If you weren't aware of it, thought I would make you aware of it. And last one is, especially if you do a lot of mergers or divestitures or even acquisitions, that the ability to take an environment from one tenant to another tenant to consolidate and be able to hopefully either deprecate or spin off a tenant as needed with the right environments and tools that are Power Platform oriented to either go or come, depending on your perspective there. That has always, shouldn't say always, that for quite some time has been possible to do through putting a support ticket in and having our kind of operations team shepherd that process along. Well, we are now allowing a self-service option for tenant-to-tenant migrations to say, if you know what you're doing, and you understand how to use PowerShell, and you understand the steps to this, which we have kind of made public in some places, that there are now PowerShell commands that will allow you to do that self-service. So I would definitely practice a few times before trying to do anything for production use there, but it's nice to know that's another new capability coming to our platform. That is it for Power Platform new things. And I've got one last announcement on the customer engagement side. From the customer service perspective, the kind of way to think about a one pane of glass to manage all of your capabilities for a number of years was surfaced from a customer service perspective through what we call the Unified Service Desk. It was a fantastic piece of technology, but it required very heavy developer involvement, and it was a desktop app that had to be deployed to each machine that was going to run it. So it had a lot of downsides. Well, we have built basically all of the capabilities that Unified Service Desk has into our customer service workspace web-enabled app for much easier deployment and with many more modern tools on it, including session management and a lot of other things that used to only be possible through Unified Service Desk. Well, Unified Service Desk isn't gone, and it's not going away anytime super fast, but we've now made an announcement that it is going to deprecate, so receive no new code involvements as of April of 2026. It will continue to be supported through June of 2028. So you got some time. You got 3 years to figure out how you're going to make sure that everything that you were doing, or at least almost everything you were doing in Unified Service Desk, can be migrated over and fixed and made work with the customer service workspace. But that is sort of the timeline. So if you're using USD, wanted to make sure you were aware there is some work to be done in your future. And with that, I'm ready to turn it over to you, Dan, and let you walk through your portion.
Back to so I don't think I'm gonna elongate this too much today, just because
your voice might not make it.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm here, right? So I'll start with like what's new with the roadmap, and like Bart kind of pointing that out. It's like there's a roadmap, and like ERP, there's a longer runway. This is like it's a bigger application. You really want to know what's going on. So, I haven't done this in a while, but I want to spend some time on the roadmap, what's coming out. So for all of you that are there, planning on updating that, which is pretty much all of my customers. So first of all, Business Central on the roadmap. There's 71 anticipated features, right? And a lot of this stuff is on intelligent AI and enhancing efficiencies as you go through, right? And so first of all, it's like sustainability. We've talked about the sustainability components within F&O. It's like we're integrating this into Business Central for the ESG components. So, environmental sustainability and governance components onto that, right? There's also some components, right, in the BI and subscription billing, like analysis on BI. There's power analysis within the BI. There's also a big deal with the integrated field service. So field service integration, we've had that in F&O, or finance and operations, or finance and supply chain, for well over a year, 2 years. But now it's like we're getting within the Business Central, which is actually a really big deal, because smaller organizations with a small field service can actually run this, but they couldn't do the invoicing and all the back office components. It's like, so that was a lot of manual intervention with that. So we can do that now. With Copilot and AI, it's like, so we have a big focus on Copilots and AI. So first of all, there's conversational chatbots and learning it. So like, if you want to understand actually how to do an accounts receivable, or actually how to do an invoice, you can ask it, and there's a conversational, it'll interact with you. It's like, what do you want to know more about that? More Power Automate integration with the Copilots and the chatbots. Integrations with ESG components, right? Sustainability components into that. There's also something that was actually really interesting, and we don't have this in finance and supply chain. We have it in sales, but not in finance and supply chain or any place else. But it's be able to use a Copilot into sales orders. So if you can receive like an email from a customer that actually wants to order and enter an order, it goes into like a shared company mailbox. You identify the customer, it'll enter that information. It'll do the required lines, check inventory availability. It'll forward the sales code as you go along, and like as you enter that, like, it'll send the confirmation back to that customer. So that's a pretty big deal. So that's actually getting some true functional usability, business process improvements within the Copilots themselves. For compliance and regional, there's some stuff for Italy, New Zealand components into that. Developments for AL application language for that. Some developments. If you're a developer in that, it's like you can read through these and see these. It's like nothing super major. For e-commerce, there's integration into Shopify, or actually added sales channels. We've had the integration into Shopify for over 2 years, but now it's like what sales channel is going to go through. Is it's like what channel, what group. If you have a B2B group that's going to go through, those are integrated into that. Otherwise, there's some other integrations into that for e-commerce, so you can kind of read through those. Governance and compliance, there's different localizations onto there. There's different legislations. I'm not going to go into all these details of that, but you might want to read through that. For reporting, kind of important, there's some enhanced data sets for being able to do Power BI. There's different word layouts. There's different KPIs, and there's also better reporting through financial capabilities. So you can actually do Excel templates and save those formats and actually save those again. It's like actually how you want to run those. There's KPIs that are enhanced within the manufacturing, so you can actually see how you're doing versus standard on that. In the supply chain management, a couple things under that. You can actually add multiple items to a production bill of material or product components into that. It's like, so just kind of like you do an F&O, just kind of add those as you go along, and you can also do an analysis within that. There's also document attachments within the fact boxes, but you can put those in multiple places to see, it's like, okay, here's the diagram, here's how we're going to build it, especially, and that's really good for, like, build to order, job shop components. And then we can use the same logic that we do in traditional warehousing as we can do it like in manufacturing put away. It's like, how are we going to actually put this away, to what space? It's like some WMS logic on that. For sustainability, lots of small things, but the big thing on this is like we can do scope 3 emissions. And scope 3 emissions, not only is like the emissions that you actually get through your ERP system, but you can actually pull it from multiple different sources. What if you pull it from the machine, pull it from the truck, pull it from someplace else, and compile that in to actually get the true emissions from what you should be doing, or what's the true output of that. And so, those are included on Business Central. And the last thing that we have in Business Central is some enhancements in the user experience. So we're optimizing, the screen layout for the web. This actually is like so. So no matter what form factor you're using, it's optimized. And then, we can actually add PDFs to the web client instead of just a regular standard client onto that. So that's what's happening with Business Central. So, that's the major one. In commerce, we have a few updates in that as well. So first of all, like everything else, there's there's more co-pilots and co-pilot summaries onto this, right? So first of all, the Copilot summaries, we can actually, the Copilot is going to compile everything and say, okay, give you a compilation of the different statements. Tell me where there's the risk. Where's the transactions? Where do we have transactions without receipts or returns without receipts? Where do we have expenses onto this? Where do we have price overrides? It's like if you have a price override, typically that is a price override. Is this fraudulent or not? Is um, some sales clerk's buddy comes in. It's like, I want to give you a 99% discount. So basically you give it to you for free and things like that. So those are things that they're taking care of within the Copilot to actually do that. We're giving trends and insights into it. It's like, so we can give you like point of sale, or store commerce summaries. So make sure that's readable, give you the highlights, see if there's averages, summaries, so on and so forth on that, all the statements on that. Data checks on the merchandising to make sure that you have all the attributes, make sure you have the descriptions, make sure you have all the pricing correct. So if it doesn't go out, it's not going to work well, like in your e-commerce or POS systems. Clienteling, more enhancements in the clienteling, and clienteling is what's the history, what's the RFM, recency, frequency, and mode of their transactions, what's the preferred location, what products they prefer, what recommendations we can give for them, right? And that's also going to suggest other products within that. On the omni-channel for commerce, we'll look at the omni-channel and look at sales attributes for pricing. So we can look at okay, is this customer type or this item type, and the standard stuff, buy one, get one free. But if we can look at like attribute type might be, okay, what's the megapixels of this camera that we're going to reduce or increase that price on that, right? So we can actually have an attribute of an item, actually put those for pricing. And there's new payment methods that we will do for validation. So if you use like a credit card, you can it's going to get like a validation on that. It's like a check on the credit card itself to make sure it's valid. But with Apple Pay and other things, it's not the same. So we're actually helping with that real-time validations for Adyen to be able to do those type of things to make sure that there's less fraud on that. And on the e-commerce or the store commerce, which is traditionally we've been called POS, point of sale, right? There's just more things to check alerts, do validations, do alerts and notifications across that. So again, just making sure that the system's going to be running and in a healthy manner. Now with the project operations roadmap for next, there's a few things in this. And remember, there's three types of project operations. There's project operations light, well, that's just the CE components. There's project operations with scheduling and resource scheduling on that, with the back office to actually do the billing. So front end is it's the CE component, back end is the finance and supply chain component, and then we have the material and inventory base, which is traditional project accounting systems within finance and supply chain. So with this, it's like we have Copilot, so we have agentic behavior again with this, right? So we're optimizing processes for automation enable, to make sure that it looks at your Outlook. It's like, here's what you're on your schedule, here's what you're doing for this project, integrate with teams, and make sure that we streamline the time and expense entry, right? So that actually just reduce the administration that people have to do on that, because everybody loves enter time. I know I hate it, right? But if you look at project operations itself, there's a bunch that we've been investing into this. So first of all, there's one grid for materials and expenses. So it's just easier to enter, so you don't have to go into multiple different screens, enter those different components. There's a cost rate defaulting. So defaults based upon the cost rate. And you'll see in a second here, that we have some date components of that, right? There's also a single instance with multiple legal entities. So traditionally on the CE, on the light and the resource base, it's one legal entity. CE is not as clever with the multiple legal entities as would be like a finance and supply chain. But what we're doing now is we're allowing that single instance with multiple legal entities. We're expanding that out without having to do real implementation, right? So we can actually transfer that and get that over to an environment where it's the multi-legal entity, what we call the multis on that. There's time phasing of quotes and billing lines. So like construction component, like construction thing. So it might spawn months or quarters or years, and the costing, the pricing might change from quarter to month to month, year to year, whatever it might be. So we can actually time phase the quote and the billing times, anticipate, okay, it was $100 per hour in labor for this month. Next month, it's going to be 110. Next quarter, it's going to be 125, so on and so forth. So we can actually put that in for the quotes and the progress billing. So we understand it's like the true time phase. And before it was like it just looked at a date base where it pulls that in. So when we're actually going to do those transactions or that work breakdown structure, consumption that'll do that. There's also billing for resource and progress billing for resource and non-stocked, right? So we always had that in like progress billing. This is like, just kind of bid it along with like the project accounting components, but we didn't have that with the light versions. Now we do. There's a new time entry mobile app. There's also a better import for a work breakdown structure, but that only comes from a single unit. So we can import that WBS. We can also import that MPP file, which is a Microsoft project file, to get that in there, right? So there used to be kind of workarounds, like so you'd have it there, you'd export it to a work breakdown structure, be able to import it, but now it's like directly from an MPP file. Two more left here. So it's like finance. Oh, actually, this is sorry. This is a summary of finance and operation co-pilots. And I really like this one because it kind of describes it. Because we've been throwing so much at you with the co-pilots, and it kind of explains the three types, right? First of all, there's the sidecar. So I have to have on the side. It's like, so I'm in my purchasing screen. It's like I want to have some information about the vendor or some of the plans that they have on this, a sidecar engagement, right? And you use a natural language inquiry to inquire on that. There's something embedded. So you've seen the sales and the purchasing that are embedded within the finance and supply chain. It's like, so tell me about this order, tell me what's going on. And then outside, you can have agentic behavior outside of it. So if you make Bart always talks about like a Canvas app or a model-driven app to pull F&O components out of that, you might want to be able to pull information out appropriately from the outside. But it also talks about what's the release rate here with the different components of those F&O. So we're giving you a lot. We're throwing at you fast and furiously. So my suggestion is actually bookmark this and make sure that you review that, because this changes the way that we do work every day now with co-pilots. Now, the last thing I have for this week is roadmap of the supply chain. So naturally, with the co-pilots, we have vendor communication and summary. So we've had those before. So it's like, but now actually we're just optimizing that for emails, and it's like, be able to communicate back and forth, and keep that conversation going with the follow-up questions. And we talked about that a little bit before with Business Central. So on inventory and logistics, so a little bit like enhanced rebate management. So it's like with rebate management, it's like you put everything in, you submit it, and then you just run it through. Now we can actually put it in, edit it, resubmit it if we want with any changes, and that just makes it a little bit simpler on that. So a couple of things about like recalculating weighted average. We've talked about that a few weeks ago. And then trace and track with quality issues, I'll talk about in a second here. So manufacturing with asset management, just regulatory compliance with quality issues. So we can actually track information, all the different components, all the information about that, and find if there's any bottlenecks within the system. Find out just like if there's anything that's actually causing quality issues that are disrupting our manufacturing and our flow in our manufacturing. For planning, so there's an enhancements in the demand planning. So it's like there's some enhancements so we can auto detect seasonality. we can check on there's multiple signals. So it's like, so if like you have weather as one signal, it's like how's that going to affect actually your demand into this? Maybe humidity might be another one or something like that. You can actually have multiple signals. With like the release we did like just a few months ago, last quarter, you can only do one signal on that. Also, we're implementing lean and catch weights into it. So with the demand forecasting, demand planning, we did very well in discrete. We did pretty well in process manufacturing, but we didn't do lean. So we didn't have dynamic Kanbans to actually say that, okay, here's the demand for this. It's like here's the Kanbans we actually need to put out, and they didn't put that out. So that's actually finally there. And I know a few of my partners have been begging that for a while. In procurement, there's a contract lifecycle management, and I talked about this on the last show that we actually did an acquisition or a partnership for contract management within the supply chain. We're releasing this in April 2025. And the last thing is like supply relationship management, SRM. And so we have a new portal that's going to go on the Power Pages. It's a supplier-facing portal, so it's a track proposals. We can do new and existing vendors and performance, how they're doing. We can track the manage performance and all those different things. So we actually revamped how that we're doing the interaction, that collaboration with those vendors. So with that, I think that's all I have for this week. But look for the updates as Bart always talks about, right? So here's the solution updates. Make sure you stay up to date. Look at your PPAP to make sure those are updated. And if you want to find out more information on everything, there's the release schedule, the customer insights, so on and so forth. So with that, Bart, that's all I got this week.
A plethora of information as always.
Yeah.
Rest that voice up, get well, and I think that'll be a wrap for today's show.
All right, sounds good. All right, take care, everybody. See you in a fortnight.